Actually, my NPD really works.
How many folks were in the last session? Nice. This will be a little bit different. And good. It's a little bit more personal. So I'm Perrin Kaplan. I'm really excited to be back. It's my third year speaking here. And this is, we're doing a live cast. So you're going to be blood all over planet Earth. It's one of my favorite speaking opportunities because it is a little bit more personal. It's about women. It's about our personal power. It's about our personal insecurities. It's about how all that parlays into careers and the different journeys that each of us have taken. And my goal today is for everyone to learn, to laugh a little bit, and to realize at the end of our time how much we all have in common, which we do. So, esteemed panel of amazing people. Amy B. Croft, she's the CEO of New Films International. I have to say one little thing about each person. She might not want this to be the thing, but she cares about what other countries think of American movies. She can elaborate on that.
That's nice.
Shalini Govil-Pai, she's the Director and Global Head for Partner Product Solutions at YouTube, and she has been called a tech guru. Seems to be an anomaly in the industry, right? Thora, we're so happy that she is here.
Thanks.
She tried to make it last year and got stuck in traffic, LA.
A freeway closed down.
I hope that was really true.
It's fire season.
Yes. As many of you may know, she's an actor. She's in Ghost World, American Beauty, and she started acting at age 6. And I think she looks like she's about 16. I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
Sharon Kopp, GM for Movie Phone. And what did I say about you? Where's yours? You have a degree in law.
I do.
Yep. There you go. I don't. I'm envious. And then Troy Byer, director, writer, executive producer. I Really Hate My Ex. And this one was really fun. Dr. Oz says that you're absolutely fabulous.
Thank you.
Yes.
So see.
So with that, we're going to put personal and professional all together. And we don't have to go in a row. Just speak up. If you're meek and quiet, I'll probably call on you at some juncture. And then we'll leave some time for questions at the end. So what's the favorite part of your current role?
I'll start. I think my favorite part of my current role is really the wide spectrum of things that I get to do. In being the general manager of a recently reimagined entertainment brand, there's such a strong positive association with Movie Phone, and we really in my role get to do everything from the littlest thing to the biggest thing of, subject to breaking news, we're going to announce the next Mr. and Ms. Movie Phone on live TV. So that's the most exciting thing. And then you go all the way down to, pitching to new folks what the product is and how we recently reimagined it.
Along the lines of what you're saying in terms of what I do, I was brought in to relaunch and rebrand a production finance and international sales company for feature films. And sort of along the same lines, I think there's probably not much in a day that I don't touch or have something to do with. So I think the variety in your day is something that's exciting instead of doing the same thing over and over again. So.
Now see something very different. I started my career as a tech guru, as you mentioned. So I was a real geek. Always wore shorts and slippers to work because that's the geek culture. But then moved more to Hollywood as I worked at Pixar Animation and then joined YouTube. And I think the favorite part of my career is that I actually sometimes like to dress up. Yeah. And I don't feel odd when I do it.
That's great. Being a geek is cool.
Yeah.
Geek is cool. One thing I think would be really helpful, everyone has different titles. I'm the principal of Zebra Partners. I spent 16 glorious years at Nintendo after leaving the newsroom and have launched Wii, Pokemon, DS, have worked with a lot of wonderful celebrities over my time. I left about 6 years ago, started my own company, Zebra Partners, and several people came with me. We're a virtual firm that does marketing, branding, social, all kinds of good things to help small companies get traction and big companies to stay in touch with consumers. So really briefly, what do each of you do? Besides the title, what do you do?
some CEO new films right now. Basically, it's worldwide international sales and distribution. So when we see a script that comes in from an agent or from a producer, we back into how we're going to finance that picture by the estimates that I feel that I've been able to sell around the world. So in the past, King's Speech, Looper were my movies when I was at Film Nation in New York with Glenn. So it's pretty exciting. You get to look at all kinds of projects at all sorts of budget levels. And that's the really, really short version of it.
I head up a global team that is in charge of ensuring that our partners, and the partners at YouTube are essentially all the way from big media companies like Disney and Vivo, all the way down to the independents and the aspiring creators. Our job is to make sure that all of them have a place at YouTube, that they can use our products, and that we can develop solutions that enable them to be successful.
I am an actor, a producer, and a writer, and I guess that makes me a little bit of a floater, but as far as I can tell, it seems that I share that in common with a lot of the women here on this panel, because I think what's interesting about being in the world of business and entertainment today is that one thing leads you to another and another, and one area of expertise lends you to explore others, and the options are limitless, and that makes it an exciting time, I think, for now, as well as a little bit of an intimidating time, given, you know, the cultural norms that still exist.
I'm Sharon Kopp, General Manager, MoviePhone. MoviePhone was recently relaunched. You guys may remember it as a iconic voice, a hello and welcome to MoviePhone that still had you covered in terms of showtimes and tickets. We relaunched in May, and not only do we still have you covered to find showtimes and tickets, but we now include a meta search. Think about it as a kayak for entertainment. So you can search for a movie from every distribution point, whether it be, I mean, how many of you have looked for, is it on Netflix? Is it on Amazon? Is it on TV? It takes you an hour. And then by the time you figure that out, you're probably asleep like I am, because I have a 2-year-old. So we help you find what you want to watch, where you want to watch it. And the third thing is we included TV. So you can search for TV, because as many of you may know, do you want to watch 2 episodes of Ray Donovan, or do you want to watch a movie? So I oversee all aspects of the business, whether it be product, advertising, working with brand partners to launch new shows, recasting the next Mr. and Ms. MoviePhone, you know, anything that touches the brand, I handle.
That sounds great.
Thank you.
I didn't know that. You have a new customer now.
Exactly. Right.
I'm a filmmaker, and I'm also a psychologist, so I'm very much committed to making movies that are psychologically relevant in terms of transformation being available from beginning to end. So my most recent film, I Really Hate My Ex, it's about these 3 women that kidnap their exes because they really do hate them. And at the end of the film, they really get present to the fact that what they really want to say is, I will always love you. And the journey's beautiful.
Yeah, that sounds great.
That's awesome.
You have a new customer.
Thank you. Hey, I can put my film on your movie phone.
You can. We're going to have a theater.
Great.
See,
Wow.
what will come of all of this? So some of these questions, they're not all linear, logical, so I'm going to be mixing it up. But how would you describe your work style?
Manic. Manic, absolutely. And
Like
I love it.
You've got stuff going on all the time. Are you organized?
I'm extremely organized. Absolutely. That's the only way that I could actually have that as a context.
Right.
But I love it. I don't want it any other way. I love what I do. I don't work. I do what I love. And I look up and the time has flown by. So
That's
yeah.
a good life.
Yeah, it's
That's
great.
a good life.
I think part of it too, we're dealing with such big personalities, both in a good and in a, let's say, complicated way. So I think for me, it's probably as manic, but I found it really important to remain very calm. And I think my general state of being usually helps affect the room or the meetings when things get complicated or negotiations get tough. So definitely manic, because I think all of us here are touching a lot of things in one day with a lot of different people. And I think when you throw in money or financing, that also changes the dynamic for a lot of people. So I think, yeah, me being usually much calmer than anybody else in the room, even if I don't feel like that inside at all. So
I have one of my business partners, we call her the duck because she's paddling underneath the water, but she's just gliding across the top.
Yeah, I guess I have a global team, and it's a really large team. I'd say like my style is more, I want to set the direction for the team, but at the same time, like good ideas come from everywhere, especially from regions which being headquartered in the US, sometimes we forget that regional niches are different than what they are in the US. So, getting ideas from people from different areas, from different experiences, being open to that is very key for my job. And so that's something that I'm very keyed into, making sure I'm always hearing what's going on in the field.
I'd say coordinated chaos. In my instance, I'm kind of either self-employed or employed by others, and so prioritization becomes an issue at times, especially when you're trying to balance family, work life, and all that. It becomes really about picking out your A, B, C's, and D's throughout the day, and it's a challenge, but it's also fun because you get to mix it up a bit. And sometimes Z comes first, and that's what makes each day kind of you don't know what to expect, and I like that in my life right now. So I'm kind of happy with it, even though I realize that it's not ultimately the kind of headspace that I want to inhabit it for the next 20 years or whatever. I think it's just a temporary thing, hopefully.
Is your bracelet an elephant tail?
No, it's
it looks
I got
just,
two here.
That's awesome. There's one.
I'm a teenager still, so I was just forget
No, it's
about
good.
it.
There's one that's like an elven tail, looks just like
No,
that.
it's
which is
no, this is
not
a
the
symbol
tail
for
they have.
flower, and then this is an Amnesty International thing.
Wonderful.
I would say that, along similar lines, my day, the priorities shift every day. So I would say my style is being flexible, being nimble. I'm very dedicated and very collaborative with my team.
I think there's one thing too that I found interesting. For the longest time, I used to think that I was missing something, that there was some rule or there were rules that everybody else followed that I didn't quite understand or I hadn't read it. And I remember thinking to myself for a long time, God, I'm president of such and such a division. I guess it's not really appropriate now to ask someone hey, how do you run your day? I mean, am I missing something? And then you finally get to a point where you realize there really isn't a rule. It's just finding, I think, where you operate, the space you operate in the best way. And I just thought that was an interesting point to bring up.
Hillary
I
Clinton
think for a
still
long
has things she's learning.
Yeah, I just thought.
Warren
I think
Buffett,
I thought
everybody
I was
learns
missing
every
something
day.
for a long time.
Yeah, that's
you know?
great, especially being a woman. Sometimes you feel like you have to show up like you know something.
Yeah.
And it's good to actually be able to anchor in what I don't know and make sure that I have people around me that do know. And I'm finally comfortable to say, hey, I don't know this. Let's find someone who does.
Yeah.
There was a time I wouldn't do that. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I was just fake it till you make it,
Yeah, but that's once you're fine with it, then it was funny because after that it would be no matter what business it was, whether it was friends at restaurant or in hotels or other sources, all of a sudden you say, hey, listen, I've got a question for you. How do you put your day together? And it would be funny because people would say, you know what? I have no idea. How do you put your day together? And it was just sort of you asking and being open enough. You realize actually nobody really has the answer.
So
There's no answer.
you created an app,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. I created an app. I'm going to send it all to you now.
Yeah.
With my help, my new friend here.
I was
And
very
Thora's going to be the voice.
That's right. There we go.
I was very fortunate in my last role. I participated in a program called the Betsy Magnus Leadership Program, and it was a bunch of, very high-powered women executives across the cable industry. And the one overall thing that I learned from it is everyone has their challenges, and often you have to be in a very safe place to explore those challenges and have those conversations. And I think one of the best pieces of advice that I took from that, and I will share, is be gentle with yourself and realize you don't have all the answers, and that's okay. And that gives you a freedom, actually, to do things really well.
That's great.
Yes, this is exactly the kind of stuff that I want from this
That's
panel.
probably a hard one to really
Because
adapt,
I
though.
can everyone out there relate to that in some way?
Seems like it would be.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to adapt until you take a deep breath and realize that your friends and your family are equally as important as your work life. And you just take a deep breath and you realize this too shall pass.
Yep.
And, there's no getting agitated or being frustrated. It happens, and that's okay. And just being in that space and then moving on to the next. But if you stay in it, that's also a choice.
Right.
Exactly. So flipping a little bit, are you a morning person or a night owl? What are your habits?
Oh, I'm still trying to figure that out. It just depends on my project.
When morning comes, I'm just not happy.
I'm
not a morning person.
I
Yeah.
am
Or you
morning.
bounce out of bed?
I am at the gym. I'm up 5:30.
Wow.
I'm
Wow.
such
And
a
how
morning
do
person.
you do that?
But here's the thing. The problem is when I'm awake, that means everyone's awake. So
That sounds like my 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Exactly. She's awake.
There are some people in my life not
exactly
so
right.
happy about that, but
I get up really early, but it doesn't mean I'm productive right away. It's just something that happens. I'm biologically attached to the sun some kind of way because I'll stay up as late as it does, and then in the winter, I'm out But no matter what, like I find that I wake up really early, even if I'm up late the night before. I don't know what it is. I don't.
I like to
It's
stay
very
awake.
weird. Yeah.
I feel like there's so much to do. My brother has this quote, "You can sleep when you're dead."
Yeah.
He always says, I'm not really subscribing to that, but I like being awake. Do you go to bed early?
That's what I want to know.
Yeah, during the week, I mean, it depends. If there's something interesting going on, then I'll be up for it.
You go to
But
bed at 7 p.m.?
I'll tell you, I usually am in bed and asleep by, this is so boring, 9:30.
Oh, no, with or without wine?
Oh, there's wine.
Okay.
No, there's wine. For sure there's wine. I could not live without wine. I'll say
Yeah,
that.
that would be like a lot of red wine starting at 4.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have to go on. I'm sort of digressing here a little. The gym is a super, super important part of how I stay very focused and calm. So
For your head, too.
You just take a
Yes.
nap in the jacuzzi, don't
I
you? That's
just
up.
fall asleep in the jacuzzi. Yeah.
I like
So-
that.
I have to do that. I think that centers me and I come into the day in a much more, listen, it takes a while to get into that pattern, but once you're in it, I mean, even when the weekends are around, I mean, to my boyfriend's horror, I'm awake at like 6:30 going, hey, should we get up?
Wow.
So,
And I will confess that I take afternoon naps very often. And I'll tell you the
Big
reason. The reason is because I have a team in Asia Pacific, so I do stay up late in the nights for them. And I have a team in Europe, so I do wake up early for them. And so somehow the afternoons, like, it's my favorite part of the day to just have like an hour nap. And I wake up and I'm fresh and I'm just ready to address the day again. So
Some
that's my
offices
little
have
secret.
little sleep rooms. Is there
That's right.
one at work?
We do have what we call the sleep pods. I don't know if you've seen it. It's like this big gigantic
I've seen it.
Star Trek type of thing, and you can go inside it. They have an alarm every 15 minutes. So you kind of go to sleep and then you wake up in 15 minutes. Because
Because they don't want you to be in there like for
they
hours.
don't want you to be there for hours
till the
because
next day.
the research shows that 15
Minutes
minutes is
long.
actually the best. It's
Yeah,
like
that's
the cat
enough
nap is the
before
best
you
to get
hit
your
REM
brains.
too long, yeah.
Yeah, I think anything over 30 minutes starts to go into deep sleep.
Yeah.
So in the morning, what sort of you explained your routine, but do any of you stop long enough to have a cup of tea or coffee and think about the day and check your email, or does
I'm
anybody
really-
do yoga,
yeah.
or do you guys just get up and get going, or what?
I'm a transcendental meditation person, so I start my day with I meditate twice a day, 20 minutes each time. So before I have
It's the
coffee or
best.
anything,
It's the
I do my
best.
TM, and then I do it again in the afternoon. But yeah, I won't do anything without starting my transcendental meditation practice.
Does it help you
I'm a-
wake up as well?
Yes, I actually wake up while I'm doing my meditation. It's beautiful. It's really a great way to ease into the day.
Yeah.
It's nice. I highly recommend TM meditation. Yeah.
So you have a 2-year-old, so
I have a 2-year-old, so
this
I-
question does not even apply to you.
Exactly. I'm forced, as I like to say, to ache up by a 2-year-old opening my eye. So my morning starts usually, playing with her and having a little, morning time with her, which is actually the best way for me to start my day. That grounds me.
Yeah.
I do yoga off and on, but mainly recently I started this thing where at the end of the night I'll take 10 minutes and me and my fiance will just spend about 10 minutes going over what was really positive in the day, no matter how stressful it was or whatever. We'll count down a list of things that we accomplished that were good. And we tell ourselves that that'll parlay itself into more good things the next day. And so far that's been a nice thing that kind of grounds us and relieves stress. And it's also like a bonding thing. So that's kind of the thing for me, basically.
So switching to more serious stuff then, although that is serious, it's about how we lead our lives. Do you believe women have to work harder to be recognized or promoted? I know it's
I think that people like to say that a lot. And I think maybe women feel that pressure on themselves because people like to say that and they feel that way. I think I read some study about like 7 times out of 10 women, if presented with the option to do something themselves or delegate it to somebody else, they'll take it on themselves. And so I don't know if that's exactly like a thing that's placed upon us or a thing that we approach ourselves and say like, oh, no, it's better that I do it because, at least then I'll know like what the outcome will be or the success rate will be higher or whatever or what all. But I don't really feel that it's necessarily true in fact. I think it's true in theory, and we keep treating the theory as fact, if that makes any sense. I don't know.
Any disagreeers or agreeers?
I don't think that I've ever I've been doing this in this field now between Toronto, I'm Canadian, and New York and Los Angeles. And I can't think of a time where I've ever felt like I didn't have the same opportunity to succeed or be successful. And that could either be attributed to something along the lines of what Flora's saying, is I just simply never saw it that it was any different. And that also could be attributed to the fact that I've worked for some really, really great people, both men and women. But, you know, I also think we come from a different generation, maybe the beginning of where, to me, it didn't feel like there was a ceiling. I never felt like I've missed out on something because I was a woman. I never felt like I needed to work harder or differently. Although most of the people I deal with, all my foreign distributors, a lot of them are men. So I think learning, I guess the only point, the caveat there was with each different culture you're dealing with, whether it be Latin America or Eastern Europe or Asia or Western Europe, I think in the first couple years of my career, establishing that I was not what was for sale was the biggest thing. And that being said, it's not like anybody wasn't, but the people weren't being inappropriate, but
Do you mean that you weren't available to date? Is that what you're saying?
And it wasn't like anybody was sort of overtly being inappropriate, but sort of there was always, and I'm sure that's the case for every business. You're there for business, and I think that's all in the decisions you make. I mean, that's just the dynamic, in my opinion, between men and women. You know, and once you make the choice and you make it clear, I just never, you know, now all those people have been my clients for almost 18 years, and you know, there's no issue. That was a choice. You know, there's a lot of people, both men and women, that make other choices. But my choice, I think, has led me in a place where I feel really comfortable. So
I never felt that I had different opportunities, but there have definitely been moments in my life, just based on where I was in my life, that I did honestly have to work harder. I mean, when I came back from maternity leave and I was up 7 times in the night, I had to work harder. I was tired, and that's the reality of someone who didn't, you know, and everybody has that at different points in their life for different reasons, whether it be you're caregiving for a family or you're just not sleeping well. But there are points in your life that you have to dig deep to enable your day to be the best it can be. But you have to do that, and you know, dreams don't work unless you do. But there have been times that I've had to work harder.
Yeah, I would, on that same theme, I would say I do notice that women, especially once they become moms, even though like our spouses usually support us, or rather we both support each other, for some biological reason, I think the moms always feel like they need to spend time with their kids. They need to come home at a certain time. They need to make sure that they're there emotionally and physically for the kids. And so I find that a lot of women, including myself, we're just a lot more efficient about our day. You know, like I get in and I know what I need to get done. I have no time for riffraff. I have no time to just chat in the coffee store, because while all the other men are. And so sometimes maybe that gets perceived as working harder, but I feel it's working more efficient. Like I get a lot more done in a shorter time.
You mean when I tell my husband something's urgent and he's walking? I'm going as fast as I can. Really? God love you. Any other thoughts?
I think it's true when you're a mom and you're a business person, you have double accountability. So you have to find a way to make it all work. I remember when I was mixing sound on one of my films on the sound stage, I was sitting in the back nursing my son. You know, my sound engineers didn't want to turn around to ask me a question. They're like, what do you think about that? So it's a little challenging. And I always feel if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person, you know, because there's just a certain level of management that busy people bring to their life.
Yeah, it's true.
It's just about working smarter too, you know.
So who all here is, so you're not a mom and you've got a 2-year-old. How old are your kids?
You don't want to know. You'll give away my age.
Are they older?
So they're teenagers. I have 2 teenagers in my house.
That's great.
Yeah, 2 teenagers.
Yes, I hope I always look like you. And you have?
I have a dog, and that is, I have the utmost respect for everyone with children, because honestly, I know it doesn't even compare, but that brat
Dogs
takes
need
up
care.
so much time.
And they're the best. The question is, do your kids know what you do for a living?
They totally know what I do, and they totally do. My daughter totally does not want to do what I do. That's her first thing. I don't know what I want to be, Mom, but I don't want to be like you. That's her only comment.
I had that too, and then the next minute it's like, Mommy, will you hug me?
They both know what I do. They're really proud of it. We and you were talking about getting home, I think, with your boyfriend and talking to him every day. And so we do that like at the dinner table. We'll talk about the good parts of our day, the bad parts of our day, and then we'll kind of brainstorm. Like, for example, I'll tell him about a tough problem that I'm having, and we'll brainstorm together on how we could fix it. So they're very involved in my day, and they know what's going on.
Yeah, mine too. I actually did a teenage movie called Love Don't Cost a Thing based on the movie Can't Buy Me Love. And my teenagers actually helped me with the dialogue because I'm just so corny, according to them. So I just sat down with them and ordered lots of pizza and hot wings and just let them go through the script and use their dialogue that they would normally use. And I looked really good on screen, like a real cool writer. Wow, she knows how teenagers talk. So my kids are very helpful, very supportive. Yeah.
What would the little girl in you say to you now?
Good job.
So you're good job.
At least she's got nice shoes.
She'd be proud of you.
Yeah, my little girl would say, go to school. Because I started my career on Sesame Street when I was really I was 6 years old. And I grew up thinking, I'll just be an actress. And everyone's like, well, just be an actress because you're pretty. And if you just smile and be cute, you'll always have an acting job. And when I was about 30, I thought, wow, this is really fading fast. And then that's when I went back to college and got my degree in psychology. But the little girl in me would say, you know what, put your education over your looks. Because the looks will absolutely expire, and it's just exhausting to try and get any, momentum out of that.
Yeah.
So go to school.
Anybody else?
I think the other thing the little girl me would say is take more chances. Be a little bit more flexible and try different things. That's one of the great things about my new roles. I had very big corporate jobs at huge companies, and you have the opportunity to do very amazing things. I wouldn't have changed it for the world, but when you get to be in a position where you can now run a business and work to reimagine something, you have to use your creative skills and you have to be flexible. So I think that's what they would say: be more flexible, be more creative.
So this is where interesting stuff pops up. What did you want to be when you were a kid? It could be, it evolves and changes, but what do you recollect?
I wanted to be a vet. I think I
wanted to be a vet too.
I think I wanted to be a vet.
Dueling Vets, the
Dueling
next
Vets.
show.
That would have been harder than what we did.
Right, exactly. Right.
I wanted to do everything. I wanted to do, I had it all mapped out. I was going to spend a year being a cop, and then I was going to go off and become a figure skater, and everything. I was really ambitious.
You try to get the roles that fulfill those inner child dreams.
I really failed at that. But no, it's just I just thought, I don't know. I remember being a kid and thinking I never subscribed to stereotypical jobs for females or anything like that. I just always inherently thought that I could kind of do whatever I wanted, and I really always thought that the horizon was limitless. And I still feel that way to a certain extent. It's a lot more tailored to reality, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I always wanted to be in movies. Like, movies was always, so I grew up in India, where there are only two big passions. One is cricket, the other is Bollywood. And so I always wanted to somehow be part of that Bollywood scene, but I knew I was never good looking enough to act in it. But I was actually not too bad in science and math, so I thought maybe there's a technology angle that I could take. And really that's why I eventually ended up at Pixar, which is my early on in my career, making movies from technology.
I think one thing too, I actually never, even when I was in university, my degree is in sociology behavior. And my family, my father is a director producer, and my grandmother was a very big stage actress in Canada. And to be honest, I had no interest in acting and not a lot of interest. I don't think I even knew a single thing about the business I'm in now on this side of it. But I knew, because I was sort of surrounded by a very eccentric and very interesting, the good, the bad, the crazy, and everything in between. I think my passion was people. And it sounds probably a little bit cheesy, and I don't intend it to. But truthfully, I think that was always the guiding principle. I always followed my heart, and it never took me somewhere I shouldn't be. Even at times where I was sitting in meetings or in an interview thinking to myself, how in God's name am I in this conversation right now? Or how did I get here? But there was always, I think, really trusting your gut.
Yep.
Really, really that feeling in your gut, if you can listen to that, you're gonna hone that skill. And whether it be in making deals or knowing what kind of people you want to work with or what companies you want to be at, or whether it's to your private life. I mean, just following that feeling in your gut has never taken me the wrong place. And when it has, that was the lesson too, which was, oh, well, I did feel differently and I didn't make that choice. So
When your confidence like wavers, what are your coping mechanisms? What do you tell yourself? I mean, I could have thought, oh, I'm going to get up here and I'm going to accidentally vomit. How do I not make that happen?
I just keep in mind what I'm committed to.
Mm-hmm.
I just anchor in my commitment, and I'm not concerned with the process because it can always change from one day to the next. And my confidence waxes and wanes. And as long as I can stay anchored in what I'm committed to causing as a result for myself, it doesn't matter what happens today or tomorrow. I just keep my eye on the target, and it just keeps me in the game.
I often, I'll often phone a friend. I'll do that. I have a couple of really great friends, including my husband, who, when I'm feeling like my confidence has been shaken, I'll go have a conversation with, and they remind me of all that I've achieved and what I'm driving towards. And I usually leave that conversation feeling very calm and ready to take on what's next.
And maybe realize that what you were wavering on was not something of importance anyway.
That's right.
Yeah, I had the critics, they killed my first movie that I did. And I mean, I really didn't know how I was going to get back out. And I was talking to everybody, and it took me out of the game for like 2 years. Roger Ebert just tore me to pieces. And it was my first film, and it was something that I financed myself, and Fine Line picked it up. And
what did you say to yourself? Did you say like, he's an idiot, or, oh my God, this is harder than I thought?
I couldn't believe he was being so ruthless. I was like, just give me a break. And the movie tanked. And so it took me out of action for like 2 years. And what really helped me is like, what am I committed to as a filmmaker? Am I committed to getting great reviews from Roger Ebert? Or am I committed to making a difference and bringing that to the big screen? Yeah, thank you. And that's the only thing that got me back. And that's what you're saying, that gut feeling inside. Even though it wasn't the best film, it was my self-expression. And I'm obviously improved over the years, but when the confidence is kicked out of you, it's easy to bonbons and a couch look really good.
I think that's a good point too about family and having people, friends, family around you. I don't think there's a person on this panel or on any panel, this entire show, or anyone in this room who, no matter how much experience you have or how many great opportunities or places you've gotten to go, that don't have those moments. And I think having a group of people or one or two people you can call to say like, oh my God, I just made the biggest mistake, or what did I do this for? Am I doing the right thing? I think that is invaluable.
Yep.
Invaluable.
Yeah. And really, when we have these failures, I've been studying this book by Napoleon Hill. It's been amazing. And he talks about how within each failure is the secret for success. If you actually move towards that failure and study the failure as you would marvel a success, but really study what went wrong, what was missing, the presence of which would now make a difference. So that helps a lot too.
They're growth opportunities.
Yeah,
You often learn more from failing than from succeeding.
Right. That's exactly what he's saying.
I actually had a client who's also a producer say something many years ago that's sort of along the lines of what you're saying. When you have those feelings of feeling really uncomfortable, or you're just so fundamental, like just whether it's about a situation or a decision you have to make, was to lean into it instead of away from it. And when you can lean into it and really sort of sit in it.
Did she steal that title from you?
She did. Yeah. No, but I think that's
great.
I think have an attorney over here.
Such an important thing. It's such an important thing to be able to like move towards something that feels uncomfortable.
You go toward
figure
the
out
flame.
why, and then you can get past it.
It's often harder to work through something, and it's easier to walk away.
Totally.
I mean, no one realizes that the hard work is in doing, the more difficult things and staying there and developing. And people think, if I just walk away, that'll be better. But that's actually the easy path, and the harder path.
Right.
It'll catch up with you.
Yeah, and you're going to have
That
to deal
always does.
anyways. I always say dig where you stumble, which is,
Mhm.
because that's where the gold is. And the mistakes that I made in that film, I've never made again, I'm happy to say.
So parlaying that into leadership, what defines a great leader to you today? And you are welcome to describe yourselves in that category. Is it different for women than men in your mind? Are men looking for something different than women?
You mean in terms of leadership?
Yeah. What makes a great leader?
I think a great leader is someone who creates opportunities for other people to become leaders. It's not measured by how many followers you have, it's how many leaders you're able to cause.
Yeah.
I think
You
it's
can clap.
a marriage of like direction and compassion. Sorry, clap away. Direction and compassion, direction in the sense that you know where you need to take your team, and compassion in the sense that you know when to step away from the ultimate goal of that and focus on your team. And whether that be like in the creative or the business realm, I think that it's finding that balance and letting the people around you know that you're just not, there to only achieve one goal, that you have the entire team's best interest at heart. Because it really, you're not going to get there unless the team is performing well anyway. So it's direction and compassion as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. It's just like if I'm going to work with a director, you want somebody to not only just tell you what to do, but tell you why you should be doing it and how it's going to help everyone.
I agree. I think a great leader is someone who really does their job well and gives you the ability in the room to do your job well, and leads by example, but also gives the gift of feedback and tells you when you're doing something well and tells you when there's room for improvement. Because if you only ever heard the good things, you would never develop.
Correct.
For me, leadership is really about vision. Like, for me, a leader is someone who has a vision. For example, a president of a country, does he have a vision for the country and where he wants to take it? And then does he empower he or she? And then do they empower their followers to be, like you said, leaders who can then actually make the vision happen? And I work for Google, so this is kind of biased, but like for us, Larry Page is that leader, right? He has a vision and he empowers everyone in the company to actually perform against that vision and to come up with great 10x ideas based on the vision that he has of where he wants to take technology and where he wants to take the world. So for me, that's really the key, is that vision.
I think there's always, I think having a clarity, I think it goes along something, we're probably repeating a bit, but clarity and a defined goal for people is really important. I know for me, that's always been really important. And trust. Trust is something that's earned. But when I started at this company, I think the owner, Nassim, and I, there was a time period where you're trying to figure out each other's language and what does everybody need and what are our shared interests and what are we trying to build. And he committed to saying to me, listen, I understand your vision. You tell me what it is you want to do and I'll support you. And, to both, in the beginning, I think to both your pleasure and a little bit of horror, because you're like, oh my God, so I hope this was the right decision.
Yeah, right.
He really did do that. So I think trusting me to go forward and make certain decisions and move the company in a certain direction is both scary and exhilarating at the same time. But that's resulted in things like, most recently, I signed a deal with Ridley Scott and Scott Free on a picture with them. So that, was all because he sort of said, listen, run with it, go for it. And that's what it results
great.
in. So,
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when he empowered you, then you stepped into your power.
Yeah.
And that's what I
Yeah.
think leadership is empowering people and having them having to take a stand for their greatness.
Yes.
I think that's right.
So congratulations, that's awesome.
I think the vision is a big part of it, and also how that vision then trickles down to every different level. So someone sets a big vision for their company. When I started at Moviefone, the owner of my company said, I want to see, content everywhere. Moviefone should be a front door for all things entertainment. And my idea for it was, well, how do we have more video on the site? People think of it as Showtime to tickets. Well, so 2 weeks ago, we launched a Watch Now feature so that people can actually go there, and we're premiering, Showtime shows and everything.
Nice.
And that was our vision. Well, how do we get content everywhere? And, he gave me enough space so that I could think about how that applies to Moviefone and launch something. And literally, why he's a great leader is he just gave me the room to do it. And I sent him the note after, hey, by the way, Watch Now has just launched and we had these new Showtime shows up there. And he was like, that's great.
It's awesome. So do you think that it's a saying of the past that it is real sometimes, not real, a bunch of boo-ha-ha, that women can be bitchy and men are just strong? And you can answer that any way you want.
He laughs.
I don't think there's anything wrong with being a bitch as long as you're a responsible bitch. You know? And I think it's when you're reckless.
The quote
with
of the day.
When you're a reckless bitch, that's a problem. But on the set, sometimes I have to actually step into that space because sometimes that's just how you got to produce results, especially when you're going over, you're running late, you're behind on your call sheet. It's like you're halfway through it. So, I don't think that holds true so much anymore. I think women can be bitchy as long as they're responsible. Then it becomes like power, like Hillary.
Yeah. I can't think of a time even do I get angry and frustrated. It's not often, mostly because my role in my company, I think part of it is to remain calm. There are other bigger personalities than I am, and there's not enough room in one room for me to be bitchy and everybody else to be upset. So, but I don't think it's being bitchy. I think it's just if someone doesn't do the job, I don't care if you're a man or a woman or if I was working for someone. If I didn't do the job, I would expect to be in trouble. And if that's called being a bitch, then
I think there's a difference between like being assertive and being a bitch. And sometimes when women express assertion, it's more like, oh, she's such a bitch. But it's really not that. I mean, being strong doesn't mean that you're a bitch. Honestly, it means that you've got something backing up why you're saying what you're saying and that you've got a clear thought behind it. And it's not some like emotional outburst, which by the way, men have all the time. It's called anger. So, it's like, everybody has attitudes. Everybody's, gets in a huff a little bit. And that's what it is at the end of the day. I think the difference that separates true bitchiness is if you have a reasoned thought behind the, let's say, passionate expression that you are trying to convey to somebody else. I take issue with the term even bitchy in that context because it's not that, and I take issue with the term in general because it's everyone's bitchy.
I think it's all in the delivery, really. I mean, you can have a point of view and
the intent behind it.
And look, I've worked with people who that word was probably appropriate for, and it was in the delivery and in exactly really in the intent of what they were saying and how they did it. And I've seen women, recently I had the pleasure of working with Susan Lyon at AOL, and she's the most graceful, strong, eloquent senior executive, one of them I've ever met. And no one would ever say that about her because it's in her delivery and her intent, and she's so smart and eloquent. So it's really what backs it up.
Yeah, I think if it's mean-spirited, that's not constructive. So then I think it falls into that category. But what Laura was saying, I think it's anything outside of that is just, that's just being human. I don't think that has much to do with anything else.
Well, so I guess the question is, if Steve Jobs was a woman, would you think he was a bitch?
Right.
Probably the C word.
Right now,
I would want to take him shopping for a little wardrobe touch-ups. What I want to do.
Not 1 ounce of color. What's wrong with you?
So you're all really delightfully confident women with big hearts, and you're smart and clearly have passion for what you do, and you see the world as an opportunity for everybody, not just for yourselves. But we've all worked with people that have what is considered a passive-aggressive style. How do you deal with that kind of a situation?
I have a great story I'd like to tell. When I was a very junior lawyer, and it was about 3:00 in the morning, and we were doing a closing, and everyone's running around, everyone's tired, and I had a very senior male attorney on the other side come up to me and ask me to make copies because that's obviously what I was there for. And how I dealt with it was I literally, instead of saying no and explaining that I was actually an attorney on the other side, I said, yes, be happy to help you out because I know it's really late. And as you know, I'm in the attorney on the other side, and his face literally dropped. So I literally said it in the calmest way, and he was embarrassed. And in fact, the senior partner on my deal came up to me after and said that he was so impressed by the way I handled it. Instead of being like, well, I'm an attorney too, and I don't make photocopies. I said, yes, happy to help you. Just so you know, let me introduce myself. And that was more, impactful than anything else than getting angry.
Mm-hmm.
Passive aggressive is like, it's funny because sometimes people go like, oh, well, the best thing for a woman to be with is passive aggressive. And then when you are passive aggressive, like, stop being so passive aggressive.
Yeah.
And it's just, it comes to a point where like you just literally have to lay your cards on the table and express what it is you're really going for. I mean, in kind of the same vein,
Right.
there was, I was working on this film, and somebody from the studio came down and they wanted to have a wardrobe session and go over every single outfit that we had, because me and the director had picked up all these other clothes, and the shots had been emailed to one of the executives. And the next day they come down and they're like, oh, well, okay, well, for this scene, we're thinking something maybe more like this. And they start sending like all these, fashion images and everything. We're like, and it came down to like 10 o'clock at night. We were shooting the next day really early. And it was just like, at some point it was like, oh, okay, how many looks do you need to go over? And it's because, I mean, I understand, contracts and being a tool of the company and all that. But at the same time, they hired me for a reason to put, and the director as well, to put in our own creative input into it. So, I mean, when those are consistently challenged and being tweaked, it becomes very confusing as actually what you were really hired to do. Were you hired to bring something to it? Or just be.
Well, you probably had patience until it finally went over that point.
At some point, it just becomes like,
stupidity.
okay, what is actually going on here? Because I've been polite for the last 2.5 hours, and now I want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
I think I just ask every time there's something. I mean, there's been a couple of circumstances where there's very passive aggressive behavior, and I'm usually listen, and then I just say, so do you want to tell me what you're really upset about? I mean, that's always the simplest
awesome.
way. And they
Yeah,
sort
that's
of look a little bit surprised. And they're like, well, I'm not upset. Then I'll say, well, you seem very upset. So do you want to tell me what you're upset about? And then that usually, then most of the time people will actually tell you what they're upset about. Well, so-and-so did this, and I don't want to work with them anymore. You go, okay, that's all you need to say.
So completely switching direction again, do you think that the variety of types of clothing women can wear, revealing or not, in a workplace affects their job versus, I think, men have a much more limited array of dockers that they can wear? And do you think it affects their careers?
I think if you're waking up and the first thought that you have in the morning is what you're going to wear and not how are you going to perform throughout the day, then you probably have a problem. Yeah. No matter what you do or where you're at. And that goes for men too. Sorry.
But I also, I had a college roommate who in college would dress well to test well. And she felt that if she was dressed up, she would perform better. And I'd be showing up in like sweatpants and, a Northwestern sweatshirt. And so that was okay for me. So I think it's really a personal preference, or whatever you feel comfortable.
Fixed her head.
Yeah, fixed her head. So, but it's whatever you feel comfortable in. I mean, on a Friday afternoon, there's probably lots of us who don't have as many meetings, who go a little more casual because that's what we're comfortable on those days. And guess what? A lot of times we're most productive on those days. So it's really about being flexible and knowing what kind of conversations and what people you're meeting with that day, and then you feeling, happy and proud of yourself and performing that way.
Yeah, adaptability.
But if you're in meetings or in a workplace where a woman is wearing something really revealing, I mean, you really see plenty of chest, or even if a little sneak of the belly is showing, do you think that affects the job? How well he or she will.
It distracts from what the purpose of. I mean, that would be like a
they
guy
hurt
wearing
themselves by doing it.
Well, I mean, wear whatever you're comfortable in, but I mean, it would be like a guy wearing short shorts to a meeting or something. I mean, you'd be very distracted looking.
There's too much air conditioning in Los Angeles to be dressed
right.
I mean, you can't say it affects the job performance. What you could say is it affects how people perceive you. As much as we don't like that,
it could affect your career.
Try to say that
based
shouldn't be the case. It doesn't matter. It still is the case in the sense that if a guy showed up in Speedos or whatever, we'd be like, whoa, what's that about?
Yeah.
But,
Snapchat.
Yeah, but I think adult women are pretty smart and we're adaptable and we can figure out like what's appropriate or not given the environment, and it depends on the situation. Like if if you're working as a crew member on a film, go ahead, rock out with your mohawk and your ear piercings and whatever you want. It's just, if you're in a different environment, you adapt.
I actually had to implement a dress code on my set recently. I had a lot of the PAs that were showing up, the girls were showing up with these shorts that were like brief underwear. And it was just, initially I didn't have a problem with it, but then I started to see how it was having an impact on my crew. They were moving, my gaffers were moving like in reverse, when I'm trying to set up a new shot, and she's sitting there twirling her gum. And so, yeah, I actually had to to set a dress code because it was interfering in what I was trying to do.
I think
Just a few women, yeah.
I think there's a couple of things just a little bit different. I mean, last Friday, sort of ridiculous. I am obsessed with old vintage rock and roll shirts, and a couple of the people who are working in like production, they wear them. Somehow we got in a conversation last week, so I instituted Rock and Roll Fridays, which just sounds so ridiculous. But the
Sounds
truth of the
great.
matter
No,
is,
it's awesome.
everybody came to work on last Friday, everyone wearing like their best rock and roll, Love and Rockets, Zeppelin, whatever shirt. And I'll tell you what was really great about it. Our lawyer, who is about my particular lawyer, not all lawyers, but just so stiff. I mean, he showed up wearing this amazing rock t-shirt and knew so much about music. And we all ended up sitting outside and
So lovely.
having lunch together. But it's funny, just even the idea of dress code, I guess that's what I'm sort of touching on. Everybody got to relax a little bit, and it was Friday, and so no one really had meetings, but it's kind of nice because everybody sat around and telling stories, and we all ended up, what was your, best concert you've ever seen? You could tell people's ages. Like one of the assistants, it was Britney Spears, so that sort of positioned her in the company.
That's
But
a great idea.
Yeah, you created a sense of
awesome.
community and a
Yeah.
nice icebreaker to get to know people on a deeper level and make them more comfortable so that they can come in and be themselves. That's
Getting
great.
to know each other on a different level. It's
Yeah.
great.
So speaking of like attire, just as a quick tangent, if you were to put on a costume for Halloween, what would you be?
Is this a trick question?
No, there's no trick.
Yeah, well, I have to match my daughter. She wants to be a princess, so I have to somehow coordinate to be a princess with her as I was instructed by her.
You could be the pumpkin,
Two-year-old is
you could
getting
be the
in trouble.
pumpkin
Yes, my
coach.
2-year-old
Okay.
has given me explicit instructions that I shall be a princess.
You shall be a princess.
When it's something like you princess, I princess, mommy. Okay.
That's great.
That's cute.
I'm having my 50th birthday party a week after Halloween, so I went to the Western Costume Rental, and you can rent a costume $100 for 2 weeks. I'm getting double use out of it.
Jeez.
So it's a Roaring 20s birthday party, so I'm going to be a flapper girl for Halloween and a flapper girl at my birthday party.
Nice.
Very good.
That's a good question.
Really
And
excited.
we're all invited to the party?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Check.
I usually end up being a witch just because I have a nice black dress and I bought a black hat. And so I kind of reuse it every Halloween. So that's my sad story.
I think I dressed up for the first time last year in like 10 years. There used to also be a major film market that happened called MeFed that happened over Halloween. So for actually years and years and years and years, I was never here for it. But last year I was a cop, which sort of seems appropriate in like real life, I guess. I don't know.
I'm supposed to be doing the whole Bonnie and Clyde thing this year. My friend's having a costume party, so.
Well, my 11-year-old, every time she sees me, she says, I believe in unicorns. It must be something going around again. So she doesn't know it, but I'm going to be a unicorn.
Oh, that's
Very
awesome.
cool.
That'll make
You
her
are a
happy.
unicorn.
I am a unicorn. I'm unbelievable. Something like that? Or I have something on my head or?
No, we have a saying for folks that, this women I participate in this leadership program, we're the bees. Because a bee actually symbolizes the impossible because bees' wings are too short and technically they're not able to fly.
That's
So we
awesome.
actually call things when, we call people a unicorn when they're just like, they have such a presence and they can bring, it's like almost so unbelievable that it's amazing. So you're a unicorn.
Yeah.
I think being a unicorn.
Oh, as are you all. And all of you. You're all sitting in here. It's
The
awesome.
unicorn panel.
The unicorn panel. I believe in unicorns. What is the, I don't want to say worst, but most depressing, hardest thing that's happened in your career? And then what would be on the opposite end? The most exciting, unexpected, or you worked hard for and got it point in your career? And there may not be just one. So maybe just pick one of each of the variety of experiences you've had.
I can start with that. I guess it's sort of twofold. One of the greatest opportunities that I see myself having so far was when I was asked to come out to New York to be Glenn Basner's senior VP at Film Nation. And Glenn, for those of you who don't know, has an unbelievable reputation. He ran Focus and Good Machine. He was Harvey Weinstein's right-hand person forever at Weinstein. Probably one of the greatest, coolest, most talented people that I've worked for. And I was out there for 3 years and in New York City, which I love New York City. And because the company was not at the point where it is today, The board decided, and rightly so, that really we kind of had the same relationships and it wasn't really necessary for me to be there along with Glenn and then 2 junior people. And Glenn was really sad and I was really sad, but I'd never, ever been let go from a job, even though from a logistics standpoint or from a business standpoint, it made absolute perfect sense. But I remember thinking to myself, this can't be happening. I actually thought Glenn was kidding when he came to say, I've got really bad news, we need to talk. I actually thought he was kidding, which only made it worse because he was a huge practical joker as well. So, I mean, it only made it so much worse.
Oh, wow.
But I remember at the time thinking, well, this is it. I mean, this was like my great moment and I can't believe, and it sort of comes down to a matter of, feeling like, was I not good enough? Even though I know what the reasons were, I think I was surprised at how connected I felt to my job and my position. And then when that was sort of taken away, sort of really having to kind of think, okay, what do I want to do and who am I without that? And I never really thought that I was that kind of person until that happened. But then, you pick yourself up and you brush yourself off and you get a lot of other great opportunities that come your way, which ultimately did. But definitely, I think in terms of something I didn't see coming and was really saddened by was that. And then, the best thing was I took some time off and did some things I really wanted to do. And then came back to Los Angeles and, I've now worked for 2 amazing companies and we're working on some amazing movies in a totally different position. And because of working at Film Nation, I think I'm so much better at my job. I mean, for everything that we do in our careers. But that was definitely, aside from just being sad about being let go, it comes down to your ego, which I think as women, we're always saying, well, I don't have any ego. I don't have any ego. But when something like that happens, I was so embarrassed. I thought, oh, people are going to be talking about this is terrible. And what you realize is actually, honestly, no one cares. Like people have their
Those
own
are all
lives.
really common
People
thoughts,
have their own
though.
lives. They're doing their
we
own
beat ourselves
thing.
up.
No one's talking about you when they wake up to do their working out or their meditation and saying, God, did you hear about Amy Beecroft? No one is doing that. So I think when you kind of get over yourself,
Although
a little
Amy
bit,
Beecroft was doing it.
I was doing it, yes. But I think
because we identify with our careers, and they do frequently
Yeah.
for really ambitious people. It becomes what you are.
yeah.
Some of us don't really have minds that stop if you were to stop.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm on a couch, I'm probably going to take a nap.
Right.
I
Yeah.
just don't like to sit too long.
Right.
So we're all hard on ourselves. I imagine people in the audience are hard on themselves too. And
Yeah.
it goes back to what you were saying about be gentle,
Yeah.
That's good.
So other stories, bad or good?
So I had my own startup for a couple of years. It did really well. We had about a couple of $1 million in funding. We'd grown a lot. We'd grown overseas as well, doing really well. And then, of course, as all startups do, we had our downturn and we weren't able to quite recover from it. We had to let go of everyone in the company. And I was kind of the last person doing the last payroll, which I remember just breaking down and crying because it was really, really emotional, not just for myself, but also just for the entire team and what we had built together. And then we had to let it go.
We were family.
Yeah, they were family and we had to just let it go. And like you said, it really feels like, oh my gosh, everyone's looking at me thinking, what a failure. Like she couldn't hold it together. She seemed really smart, but she probably wasn't. And that's why the company didn't do well. But, no one really thinks that way. No one is thinking about you. You're the only one thinking about yourself.
That's true.
I think like we talked earlier about having that support system, like my husband, my mentors, always being there, knowing and believing in you.
And yourself.
Right. So I think that kind of just gets you through it. But that was the worst part.
Well, I mean, like for every down, it always becomes a learning experience one way or the other. So I try not to think in terms of that too negatively. And in terms of the extreme positives, I'd say like I'd like to think that I haven't really hit that high yet. That no matter, I could look back and say, oh, that was a really great moment. That was a really good thing. That was an accomplishment or whatever. But it's just at this point, it's really not enough. And I'm not done either way. I mean, I might have
That's awesome.
more highs and then I might even have some more extreme lows. Who knows? It's unpredictable.
We hope only highs.
No, that's probably impossible. But that's what it is.
I can still wish it for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll accept that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this, I like to think of things as sort of a Venn diagram that you build on everything. But when you're in the moment and you really want something, I remember going for some early jobs after I worked at a big law firm, and I didn't get them, and thinking, why didn't I get them? I thought I did this right, and I was really, hard on myself. And in the end, it was the best thing for me. You don't realize it until you're on the other side of it sometimes. And then I ended up getting a job that led me to where I am now. But back then, I couldn't believe that I didn't get a couple different opportunities. I was so hard on myself, and everyone said it'll work out. But when you're there, you don't know that it's going to work out. But you always have to have faith that it will, and that even if there's not always one right thing. That if it's not that thing, there'll be something else. You just have to work hard and build on your skills.
Well, it's really dark there, and people have to just keep moving and doing things and not be like frozen, because you don't find light unless you keep doing something. Even if your heart's not in it yet, it will come.
Exactly.
I think my most disappointing moment was reading the reviews when my film had come out, and Roger Ebert and all the. It's called Let's Talk About Sex, and it came out during the Monica Lewinsky ordeal, and the world was saturated with.
I would have thought that would have been timely.
No. Also, was Sex in the City had also come out, so it was just like sex was everywhere. And I remember being in the back bedroom of our apartment in New York, and my husband said, "Are you going to ever come out of the room?" And I was like, "No, never." And I had reviews all around me, and they were just so awful. I was just like sobbing.
That's why you should not read them.
Oh, I will never read another review. But yeah, that has got to be like the most awful experience ever. And they were like calling me by my name. "Troy is awful." I'm like, "I don't know you."
Dr. Oz says you're absolutely fantastic.
calling you
and I
over
think he's
there.
right.
Oh, that was really bad, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I have only one more question, then I want to open it up to questions and keep a strict eye on the clock. But and you don't have to have a hobby, because everybody works hard. Is there a hobby that you have, or that you wish you could do, or that someday you plan to do? I 10 years ago, when I was sitting at my desk at Nintendo, said, I know there's something more I could do. I'm in this position where I can give back. And I started an animal rescue nonprofit, and we just placed our 5,000th dog. Yay. And they all are death row animals. And the only thing, savingGreatAnimals.org.
Oh,
we accept donations. And I have poured a lot of personal money into it. Amazing volunteers. I love every single one of them. They all do different things. We're always starving for more help. But what I have witnessed in what happens to all these dogs that are on death row for no fault of their own is so difficult. And I've been asked repeatedly, given how bad that is, how do you keep doing it? And my sort of, in my forward in life moment, given how bad it is, how can I not do something about it? So that's what drives me every day. And I love every single one of those doggies. That's my thing. So your hobbies, interests.
It's a hard one to follow.
I am.
You can join.
I'm really into healing heartbreak. I'm been studying cardiomyopathy for a very long time, and I work with victims of heartbreak or anyone who's suffering from any form of grief as a result of losing a loved one by way of death or just choice. And I lead webinars every week, and it's called Heartbreak Recovery Counseling. And I wrote a book called X Free. Thank you. 9 Keys to Freedom After Heartbreak that I pretty much just give away. But I go and I work at battered women's shelters, and I'm really into working with people who are suffering from heartbreak. So
It's painful.
it is.
It can ruin
It's very dangerous.
your hope for life. Yeah.
Yeah, no one should have to go through that process alone. I just want to throw in that neuroscience now proves that when someone is suffering from heartbreak, the region of the brain that is stimulated is the exact region of the brain that is stimulated if you hurt your hand, if you have physical pain. So the pain from heartbreak is absolutely real.
Yeah.
So if you know anyone suffering from heartbreak, I know it sounds really strange, but you want to have them take Tylenol immediately because it does make a difference.
Oh, that's great
Yeah.
advice. Wow. Any other hobby loves, even if you don't have time or you think about it, or?
I think I feel like my hobbies are really nowhere near as
You can enjoy
stop
knitting.
there.
It's okay. It's
I
your
think,
thing.
honestly,
About my hobby.
being in the gym, and I love cooking. I really love cooking for friends and doing dinner parties. I find that very, very calming. Usually, I think a lot of it has to do with it when I can turn my brain off. The workouts that I
Yes.
do are
Glass of wine.
so difficult that it's all I can think of when I'm in it. And I think cooking, you're doing a lot of this. So it's like very calming to me, both of those things. And then I jumped horses for a really long time. So
Wow.
eventually I would like to start doing that again when I have all that spare time that's coming my way.
Wear a helmet.
Always do.
Yeah, good.
Always
My
do.
friend just had a really bad accident.
Mm.
Yeah.
She was jumping, yeah.
I've fallen a couple times.
Oh,
I like to travel a lot. I like to explore different cultures. Once we had kids, though, we've kind of slowed down on that.
Everybody.
But once they get out to college, we'll probably restart that.
Yeah. The world has many awesome places.
Painting, writing. I work with Southern Poverty Healthcare Center. It's a clinic down in South Central. So, there's that. And just basically, trying to squeeze in free time for a little bit of travel, mini vacations. I find like weekend vacations are the best.
Very
Of course,
healing.
it's like a day and a half, but it's good enough.
Yeah, takes half day to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. The journey is half the fun of it, though.
That's right.
So there's something really nice about just sitting in a car or on a plane or a train, bus, whatever, just silent.
Mhm.
It's really nice. You
Yeah.
stare out the window. Everyone should stare out the window more often, I think.
That's right.
Observe the nature.
It's nice.
I think that for me, I'd love to grow grapes.
There is a huge art to it.
There's a huge orchard. I think when I was young, living in New York, I was really into wine. I worked 3 jobs when I took some time off between college and law school, and one of them was working in a restaurant. And I learned a lot about wine. And I think that's something that I don't cook, but I like to pour the
No,
drinks that
I
accompany
can
the food.
relate.
You can come to one of my dinner parties.
I'll come
I
to your
can
dinner
relate.
parties. I will bartend. I make a mean sidecar next to the Bloody Mary.
I'll conduct the social part of it.
And I'll take care of anyone who's hurting over an ex.
Okay, perfect.
She'll give them Tylenol. I'll
We
give them
all
wine.
have pain. Everybody has pain.
I prefer
So
Advil.
I apologize for having dominated. We have about 10 minutes left.
It's a question comment. Never mind, I have to go back to the B word. I don't even say it out loud because I think the B word is degrading, demeaning, and dehumanizing to females. And the more we say the B word, the more the males are going to think that, and vice versa. I use the word bossy for the negative and for the positive, brainy. There's all kinds of B words you can use instead of the other B words. So please, ladies, don't use the B word. And you all don't use the B word either. And pass that along.
It's good.
Mhm.
And I don't think we have time for this, but I'm looking at what this workshop seminar is supposed to, also to incorporate. The building defining the women's space of power in the media in Hollywood, definitely not the boys club. So maybe 2 minutes each, you can maybe summarize what the females can do to define our base in power and not be part of the men's club, the boys club.
I mean, I think it's not a matter of boys or girls. It's actually a matter of surrounding yourself with a circle of people who support you and give you good advice and give you opportunity.
Yes.
I say sign up. Sign up for the boys club immediately. Get your card. Get in there. They're accepting members. Don't worry about it.
I agree. I think it's more about just, there's good and bad people in every industry. And it's all about finding the people, male or female. And I think there is no sides. I think if you're in the right place with the right people, then it feels, pretty like you're one group instead of it being opposites, or sides.
Yeah. The whole purpose of like equality is that
Right.
you take away those dividing terminology because it's not really true for one thing, and it's archaic.
I think
Yes.
put yourself in the most hospitable environment, and that's different for every person. But put yourself in an environment that's going to play to your strengths.
Yeah, I think just like you said, don't think of the B word. I feel like it's like, don't think of the W word. Like, you don't have to think I'm a woman and therefore maybe the ceiling is higher for me or I have to work harder. It's like, we're all people, we're all smart, and if we're all committed, we're all going to raise the ceiling for everyone, right? So I think that's the way I think about it. I never think that
Just do
I'm
well.
a woman
Do well.
and therefore like I'm not going to get this.
Oh boy, it's exciting. Okay, I know you really want to ask a question.
Oh, yes. Thank you all for being here and sharing. It was great. In piggybacking on the whole notion of women, of course, most women that are achievers aren't thinking, oh, I can't have it because someone said I couldn't. However, the diversity of women and the power you wield in your specific jobs is to perhaps put in more of that, like we don't have a lot of women characters that they did the report, women leadership, diversity of women leadership. So you're all in these great positions of being able to, let's say like if the salmon was dying out, they would put a few in a small little pen until the numbers rose and then throw them back out into the wild so that they could replicate. I think we've been behind the ball of not being in the positions of either image or words that elevate women to back to being, we're more than the majority of the population of the world. So I don't see us in the media really elevating in either the positions behind the ball or like in front of the camera and all those things, which are, I think, will help with the women who have heartache or help with, you know, that we feel that we're part of the world in a bigger way or greater than the other minority.
So you're saying
Yes.
take every opportunity to help promote.
Well, I'm saying if you're in like these, this is about building leadership and defining women's base of power kind of thing. You're in those places, which is awesome. And then how do people take the baton and pass it to the next one so that they can rise and be in a place of equality? Because it's not equal. We're not equal.
I know I do a lot of mentoring and I write a lot of articles about women in leadership, and they're really aimed at encouraging, you know, the reader to know they can do and be whatever it is they want to do. There may be some other examples of things that.
I think I found there's been actually in the last year an unbelievable amount of interest, and I spent a lot of time not in the United States. I'm always on a plane and mostly not here.
Are you here right now?
I'm here right now. I think I'm here
Virtual
right now.
her.
But it's been really, my publicity company, it was really fascinating to me in Cannes this year. I think there was probably every single day that I had an interview with La Pressa, who's one of the biggest Italian magazines, or New You magazine, which is a health and beauty magazine, or Huffington Post, and it was interesting because every single one of those interviews I did all revolved around being a female CEO. And I don't think in the past I've ever seen as much interest or as many people geared, not just in North America, but it was a lot of foreign press as well that were doing features or discussions.
The angle is of interest.
So, I mean, I think the angle actually is much, the idea, the passion is much more out there than you think. And whereas before a lot of my clients used to be men, a lot of the very, very powerful and a lot of the owners of a lot of my companies internationally are females.
Creating female-driven content is a huge thing now. I mean, if you look at it from an economic standpoint, the power of the purse is very much in play, and it has been for a long time, and it will be for a long time. And I just think it's. I mean, as far as what you were saying, like what we can do to broaden the scope of female involvement, I think is just maybe being a little bit more circumspect about really who we're marketing to and for what reason. But I think that with that, you know, a lot of the old marketing you look at, even though it was geared towards women, it was all stereotypical. It's like, isn't this lipstick fabulous? You know, you've got to get this pan. And, you know, it's just really changing now. I mean, now I don't know. The whole dynamic is really, the whole situation is really much in flux. I don't think that there's one answer. I think if anything, women just need to realize that they're already a large piece of the picture. And no matter what the message is out there that would, you know, indicate the contrary, it doesn't matter. The reality is that we are a driving force, and that's not going to change really. So,
Yeah, I also think like there's a fine line between saying I'm going to pass the baton because this is another candidate like who looks like me and is a woman like me or is the same color as me, versus finding the right person for the role. So I feel like there's that fine line that we always have to be mindful of. My belief is actually it's better to start when they're younger. And actually, we've done a number of research studies which have shown that tech companies, in my case, actually have less women, not because we're not hiring for them. It's because the pipeline, so all the way to middle school, has just dried up, right? And there are less girls going into science and technology. So I think like that's where I believe we need to start, is really encouraging our girls to be, you know, aware that they have power and that they can do this.
That's right.
That's right. I mean, AOL has a Girls Who Code initiative to help, you know, young women to sort of get into the space a lot earlier. But I do think it is about, mentoring or just being there to answer questions. I know I have lots of folks that I've interacted with, in every job that I've been in. When I get an email from anyone, I try my best to answer everyone because I'd want the same for me. So it's a little bit do what you'd want for yourself, whether that's a man or a woman.
We literally only have time for one very quick question. Wow. I know you put your hand up every time and you haven't.
I just was wondering, what are your thoughts on, like, as far as women in any kind of medium, like doing events where the focus is it's women doing blank versus just integrating women into whatever that media is? Like, do you feel like there's a benefit to focusing on the fact that you are a woman doing whatever it is? Or is it more powerful to just be a woman and do a great job and have people recognize that?
I think it could go both ways for the reasons that we sort of touched on. I think that it's important, just like I think it's important, we'll use this analogy. For example, my boyfriend is a huge guys guy. He does a lot of things that are just the guys, a lot of sports, and I think that that's really healthy. I think women need to have the same thing. I think women need to have girlfriends and do things with their girlfriends. I think in a business context, I think it's important to have certain forums where women can speak really openly about concerns that maybe only other women would have, not that they're not of interest to men. But then I totally agree. I think you make a really good point. Not everything needs to be separated. We could do a panel where we're just talking about, we have 50% men, 50% women.
Right.
We're just talking about our jobs and the
And
industry
life.
as a whole.
Right.
But I think it's important as important for men to have that conversation with one another as I think it is for women. And along the lines of what you said about, I think especially younger generations being able to understand that they can sort of step into their power and sort of think, oh, okay, so this is normal. These are all normal questions I have, or these are all normal fears I have. But I think you make a good point.
Yeah, I think you get into it only becomes a real trap when it gets into that congratulatory zone. Like, oh, this is the best female journalist, this is the best female director. I mean, sometimes that's a little bit like, oh, wait a minute, what? I mean, it becomes a little confusing. But I mean, you can't separate the fact that we're still at that place where, advancements still need to be made. I'm not going to call it a glass ceiling because, the cracks are there and it's crumbling down, or we'd like to think that it is. But I think that, it's just at the end of the day, it ideally, we wouldn't even have to make those distinctions. It would just automatically be like, what's the issue and how do you solve it?
So my hearty thank you to Amy, to Shalini, Thora, Sharon, Karen, who didn't show up, and Troy. We're just teasing. Karen couldn't.